I can't, it's too much, just go.
All right, excuse me. Yes, if y'all can move back, please. All right, we're gonna go on the record in 2022 CR 4248A. If I could have parties announced for the state,
Brittany Mitchell, Marissa Giovenco, and Ali Jackson for this.
for the defense.
Lorraine Ephraim?
All right, Mr. Ruiz, I'm gonna place you under oath, but it's just to ask you a specific question about your counsel's presence. Do you understand? I'm not gonna ask you anything about the case. All right, could you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record.
Ruiz.
All right, your attorney, Ms. Conley, is not present. So the attorney who's here is Lorraine Ephraim. The state has already completed direct examination of this witness, Dr. Molina. Do you have any objections to Ms. Ephraim conducting the cross-examination of this witness? All right, and Ms. Ephraim, do you have any objections to continuing without Ms. Conley's presence for the questioning of this witness?
No.
And Mr. Ruiz, do you have any objection to continuing with this witness without the presence of Ms. Conley? All right, let's bring the jurors in, if you'll let her know, please. We're ready.
All right, for the jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. So where we ended is state you had passed the witness, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, Ms. Conley's not here and I'm proceeding without her, right? So with regard to this examination, you can describe to the jury what you saw, correct?
Correct. What is documented in the examination.
Right,
yes.
what you saw, what you was documented. But you cannot tell this jury who caused a particular bruise, correct?
Correct.
And you cannot tell this jury who caused a particular injury, correct?
Correct.
And I'm gonna call it rhabdo. I could never pronounce that whole word. That is a progressive, it can be a progressive condition, correct?
Correct. It actually develops, again, you have your muscle injury, then those chemicals are released and you develop renal failure. So it's a full progression of rhabdomyolysis.
And it might not happen. Does it happen on, does that process begin at the time anybody has a severe muscle injury?
Well, the process begins when you have the muscle injury. But then again, whether or not you develop into renal failure, that depends on how much of a muscle injury you have, the ability of your body to clear it. But normally the whole rhabdomyolysis syndrome, so we're talking about the injury.
No, yeah, objective, non-responsive.
All right, that will be sustained.
Thank you, doctor. The rhabdo is, you wouldn't be able to give any kind of particular time frame as to how it develops, correct?
So as I was getting to, it usually takes 2 to 3 days to develop.
Okay. But one injury can add to a prior injury, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And with regard to who caused the death of Mercedes, you cannot say, can you?
Correct.
Now, this you can say is a homicide, correct?
Correct. It was determined to be a homicide.
But that's not a murder, is it?
Correct, as we,
You cannot tell this jury that the crime of murder has been committed, can you?
correct, I cannot.
That's for them to decide. You agree with that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so can you illustrate or describe to us what the homicide is and what the other categories that you make in an autopsy?
So again, we're referring to manner of death and manner of death on a death certificate. These are epidemiologic terms. These are so people who study how and why we die and generate those graphs that you've probably seen why people are dying, right? It's so that public health can see why we're dying. For instance, you've probably seen things about the suicides going up. That's from death certificate data based on these manner of death determinations. So natural deaths being deaths due purely to natural disease processes. Accidental deaths being due to acts of nature, like hurricanes, tornadoes, floodings, or events with no intention for injury. So for instance, car accidents, right? Suicides being a death where someone has caused injury to themselves. Homicides being where someone has caused injury to another. And undetermined being we don't have enough information to decide between the manners of death.
And so those are when you determine manner of death, those are the 5 categories that I guess, is it the state of Texas has established for you? Is,
Correct. Those are the manners of death that appear on the death certificate as defined by state law.
and you've never met Jose, correct?
Not that I know of, no.
And you've never met Katrina, the
Not,
co-defendant in this case.
not that I know of, no.
And you were obviously not present when any injury occurred, correct? And it's a lot of information, but the information you're communicating is solely as a result of what you saw and what you reviewed for today, correct?
Correct. It's part of our investigation into the death.
And did you review things before you testified today?
Yes,
Your autopsy and notes and those kinds of things?
correct. The entire file, which would be the autopsy report, the investigative report, the photographs, the radiographs or x-rays, the microscopy that we discussed, the slides under the microscope, all of that was reviewed.
Okay. And when you say a particular injury was the result of trauma, you can't say what particular kind of trauma it was, can you?
Other than blunt force trauma.
Other than blunt force.
Correct.
But blunt force trauma, would you agree, can occur in many ways? It's not necessarily from a physical act. It can happen if you forcefully bump into, crash blunt force trauma can happen in many ways.
Correct. It can happen in an infinite number of manners.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that it came from, say, a strike or a blow by another individual.
Correct.
I pass a witness at this time.
State.
Dr. Molina, was there anything in Mercedes' medical history that suggested that these injuries were all because of an accident?
No,
Was there anything in Mercedes' medical history that suggested that these were self-inflicted injuries?
no.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted in State's Exhibit number 97.
In defense, if you need to move about to see what's being shown, you may do so.
This is a photo that has been identified as a photo of Mercedes that was taken with Jose Ruiz's phone. In fact, by Jose Ruiz. And there has been evidence that this picture was taken at 4:44 p.m. And then there's additionally video evidence from, basically from 6:30.
Your Honor, object to the testimony from counsel.
Sustained.
If a child is forced, if, this is Mercedes. Mercedes holding an item like this with her arms out like this from 4:45 p.m. till roughly 7 p.m. Would that be something that you would feel would contribute to the rhabdo?
Yes, that could certainly cause rhabdomyolysis.
Ask the witness.
Any further questions, defense?
And again, that's because the rhabdo can be caused by contact injury or exertion, correct?
Correct. In this particular case, I'm being asked would be exertional. Yes.
Okay. And again, you're not here to make any legal conclusion, correct?
Correct.
I pass witness at this time.
No further questions.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse for.
I guess it's just subject to recall at this time.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. You can't view anything. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state of the defense. Thank you. You may step down. And we're off the record. Ladies and gentlemen, what's going to end up happening now is we're going to recess for today. I'm going to have you all come back on Monday at 9 a.m. This is the thing about the Mondays. You have all jurors brought up on Monday. So the same amount of jurors that you saw when you first came, that's going to be the same amount. So in order to make sure that you have a parking space, you probably need to be here by 8:30. The jury room will be open. Deputy Laura will let you know where you need to be. Remember my instructions. You're not allowed start to deliberating internally with yourself, with each other. You're not allowed to discuss any testimony that you've heard with anyone. You're not allowed to view anything. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from inside the courtroom. Does everyone understand? And if there's anyone who needs another letter, just let the deputy know. We'll make sure you have that. But it is close to 12. Even though it's cloudy outside, like London weather, you still have a free day to look at the Riverwalk. People don't go to the Riverwalk that much when they're here. I always wonder, do they realize how beautiful it is? So just look at it from a tourist point of view. All right. All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors. Don't shut down your record, just. All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, so what's going to end up happening is state and defense, you all are going to confer, and then we'll see where we are.
Yes, Judge, we will. I was gonna say she's not here, but yes, we will confer.